The first candlestick on our list is the wide spread up green candlestick. How can we visually recognize this candlestick on our charts? We can recognize it because it has a long body, so the rectangle is wide, it's spread out. We also have an instance where the closing is higher than the opening, and this is what makes the candle of green color. It's a bullish candlestick, and usually it has little to no wicks on either side, and when comparing where the price started to where it ended, the buyers clearly won. Now, there is a common misconception where people often mistakenly state that, hey, there are no upper wicks, so buyers were always in control and there was absolutely no selling resistance. Because if there were some selling resistance, wouldn't I see an upper wick? And as logic as that may sound, that's not always true. It turns out that this candle has many different ways in which it could have been formed. In general, we do have the following. We know that during the move, the buyer stepped in a lot. And I say a lot because the rectangle is wide. And yes, sellers might have stepped in, undoing the buyer's work temporarily. And this stepping in of the sellers would have created an upper wick temporarily. But even if the seller stepped in, buyers regained control and showed strength overall. And when the buyer stepped in again, they erased the temporary upper wick that was created due to the seller's resistance. Truth be told, guys, we can only see what really happened inside of this candlestick by dissecting it on the faster time frames. This is a skill that we learned in the previous chapter. So if you haven't watched it, I'm gonna pin it up right so that you can go watch and learn how to use multiple time frames, because it's really going to help you in your trading journey. What is the interpretation of this wide spread up candlestick? We know that the buyers clearly stepped in, and yes, sellers might have stepped in as well, creating the so-called temporary upper wick. Even if that happened, the buyer stepped in again. Overall, the buyers had enough strength to have a final score in their favor. So there is clear sentiment in one direction, and it's not in the seller's direction, it's in the buyer's direction. And for this reason, we can say that this is a sign of strength. And I put bullish in between brackets because it's as a reminder that please, when it's a sign of strength or a weakness, see it from the buyer's perspective. So because the buyers are clearly winning here, when you look at the final score, it's a sign of strength. And what this essentially means for what is likely to happen with the price is that the price is likely to continue going up. And the reason for this is because the buyers have the upper hand. It's very likely that the buyers are going to continue having the upper hand for the next candle or the next two candles. It's like they have enough gasoline in the tank that they can still continue with some of the momentum that they have left. They're not going to make a sharp stop. Now let's go to the second candlestick, which is the wide spread down candlestick. How can we visually recognize this candlestick on our charts? It has a long body where the closing is lower than the opening price, not higher, but lower. And as a consequence of this, the color of the candlestick is red, is a bearish candlestick. Usually it has little to no wicks on either side, and when you compare where the price started to where it ended, the sellers clearly won. And once again, there is the common misconception where people think that, hey, there are no lower wicks, so that means that the sellers were always in control and they didn't have to struggle at all with some resistance from the buyers. I know that this can sound very logical, but the truth is, this isn't always true, because this candlestick also has many different ways in which it could have been formed. Either way, we can say that during the move, the seller stepped in a lot. Not a little bit, but a lot, because it's a wide spread down candlestick. We know that yes, the buyers might have stepped in, undoing some of the seller's work temporarily, and this would have created a temporary lower wick. But even if the buyer stepped in temporarily, the sellers then regained control and showed strength overall. And when the sellers regained control, that lower wick got erased. Again, guys, I'm gonna say this over and over again until it gets imprinted in your mind. We can only see what really happened inside of this candlestick by dissecting it on the faster time frames. How do we interpret this wide spread down candlestick? We know that the sellers clearly stepped in. And yes, the buyers might have stepped in. And if so, the sellers stepped in again. Overall, the sellers had enough strength to have the final score in their favor, because when you compare the opening price with the closing price, the sellers clearly won. So in this case, there is a clear sentiment in one direction, and it's not in the buyer's direction. Instead, it's in the seller's direction, which means that the buyers are weak. So let me ask you something. Would this wide spread on candlestick be considered as a sign of strength or as a sign of weakness? This would be considered as a sign of weakness because the buyers are weak. And remember, you analyze the charts from the buyer's perspective because that's the language that people decide decided to use. So this is usually considered a sign of weakness. And what this means for what is likely to happen with the price is that the price is likely to continue going down. And the reason for this is because the sellers have so much momentum still that they're not gonna make a hard stop right away. They're gonna keep going until the gasoline tank empties little by little. And if you take a look at the chart, that's exactly what happened. The buyer stepped in a little bit in the next candle, but then the seller stepped in again. So the seller still had some momentum going on.